I want to talk to you about multi-track recording. And in today's conversation, I want to really insist on the fact that whether you're doing audio podcasting or video podcasting, it's important to really understand that the notion of tracks is kind of quintessential. So, a multi-track recorder is actually a piece of equipment or software that really enables you to record on, would you believe it, multiple tracks. And so, a track, also known as a channel, represent the individual audio of each person involved in the recording, and that might be what, one person, 20 people, two people, five people. It really depends. And so popular multi-track recorders in the hardware world include the Zoom PodTrack P4, the Rodecaster Pro, and the Zoom H6. So that's kind of cool. And that's for the hardware. If you are thinking about the software, you can think about Riverside and Squadcast. Okay. So what are the pros of recording audio on separate tracks? Well, you have flexibility. Flexibility is really important, but you also have the ability to independently clean, process, or mute sections of each track. So when I talk about flexibility, I really want to talk about the fact that you have also control over individual gain and volume levels. Okay, and the thing is that if you have a multiple guests for your podcast and you are trying to really have a certain quality of audio, you want to think about that flexibility or control. Here is a classic example of a multi-track recording at work. Say you are interviewing a remote guest, and as he or she is giving you a detailed and thorough answer to a question, suddenly your phone rings. If you are recording the interview on one single track, the noise of the ringtone will be mixed in with the interview guest answer. With a multi-track recorder, you would simply remove or silence that section of your track in the editing process, and the listener will never even know that it happened. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Or let me give you another example. Say you record in a single track recording where your guest's audio is much quieter than yours. You can fiddle about this in post-production, but you risk just making your own audio much louder in a bid to raise theirs, right? It's far from optimal. So what you want to do is that you want to use multi-track recording. So this is actually the best option because you have the flexibility and the control actually. Nothing is ever perfect, right? So when I speak about the pros of multi-track recording, you also have to think about the potential cons, the potential drawbacks. And there are still a few minuses to multi-track recording. So you have increased cost. I mean, the element of money, I mean, the monetary aspect of things is quintessential. So when you think about multi-track recorder, I mean, you got to have a certain, you got to have your podcast has to reach a certain critical mass, not only monetarily, but also in terms of audience, in terms of listeners, okay? So increased cost, you may need additional equipment, better equipment, or new software. And again, we can have hardware or software. You also can think about increased complexity. So you have an element of a learning curve here. So, and then the question is, does your podcast even need that? I mean, do you need to have do you want to really introduce new complexity in your podcast operations? Because when you think about multi-track recorder, this may make recording sessions trickier to set up and manage. You also have to have an increased editing and production time. And it may actually take you longer to merge together and process the individual tracks. The big question is, do you even have a team? Do you have the resources? Do you have the logistical resources? Do you have the technology? Okay. Now, do not be actually a bit discouraged by everything that I'm telling you here, because there are still ways to do multi-track recording without excessive complexity or expense. And I'm going to explain to you how to do it. But I just wanted to first familiarize you with the potential pitfalls that you need to be aware of. And multi-track recording also doesn't offer the same level of disturbance protection if you are recording together in the same room. Okay. And what happens here is that if, let's say, if our phone ringing example happened in a local recording session, everyone's individual mic will still pick up the noise, unfortunately. Here, multi-track recorders still give you flexibility, correcting volume levels and varying mic technique, but there will always be a level of bleed. So be aware of that, okay? it's one of those things where you have to see what kind of technological sophistication or setup you had in the first place, because that's going to determine actually how the output will look. In other words, the input will have a big impact on the output, and this is another element you have to think about when when you're thinking about setting up your podcast technology this year. So let me give you the options here. When you think about multi-track recording, what are the best multi-track recorder options this year? As I said a little earlier, you always have the software and then you have the hardware, right? So you have the hard or soft. I want to first talk about the multi-track recorder software. And then you have first you have Squadcast. When you think about Squadcast, what do you have here? You have a flexibility for sure, but you also have a flexibility. I mean, you have a flexibility, but you also have scalability. That's what I wanted to say. You have scalability. So with Squadcast, for instance, you have $20 for 5 hours of recordings every month. You have one host and up to five guests from $40 per month. And you have 12 hours video recording from $40 per month. So pretty affordable. You also have Riverside. And I mean, I'm just giving you some of the big names in the industry when it comes to multi-track recorder software, okay? You have Riverside, and with Riverside, you have a pretty interesting and compelling offer. Why? Because you have a free unlimited single track recording. That's kind of cool, especially if you have a podcast whose frequency is not really that often. And for Riverside, you have to pay $180 a year for 5 hours of separate audio and video tracks. And you have a one host and up to 7 guests. So this is kind of interesting too. By the way, Squadcast, Riverside, we have actually reviewed any of those platforms actually on other shows. So if you're interested in going more granular, please go to our database, our library of audios, and you really make yourself comfortable. I mean, we also have reviewed another multi-track recorded software tool, which is Zencaster. And Zencaster actually offers you a free unlimited audio, MP3, and also video recording. You have up to 12 participants per recording. That's kind of cool. I mean, where Riverside was giving you up to 7 guests, here with Zencaster, you have up to 12 participants per recording. You have upgrades available for $216 per year. Now, of course, Zencaster is a little more expensive than Riverside, but hey, listen, it's still good. Let's also talk about. So I spoke to you about the software, but let's talk about the hardware now. So let's talk about multi-track recording locally into a computer. And I want to first talk to you about Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, and very interesting machine. You can look at it on the screen here. So if you only have 2 participants, you can use this tool. I mean, okay, Focusrite Scarlett 212, which is actually a USB audio interface. Okay, you actually would need to plug into XLR mics and record into a software like Audacity or Adobe Audition. Okay, and so this route actually uses stereo recording where one person is on the left channel and the other on the right. So you have this sort of duality here in terms of recording, but also in terms of input, but also output. After the session, you can split these tracks and do the post processing and leveling independently before syncing them back together. So what happens here is that you have the flexibility is not just in terms of input, but also during the transformation of the audio. Okay. So besides Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, you also have another the device that I want to share with you. That's the Rode NT USB via Rode Connect software. So this is kind of hybrid because it's not really let's say hardware because you have an element of software into it. Okay, but the cool thing is that you have the possibility to get things done a lot faster. So if you would like to have up to 4 participants, then 4 Rode NT USB mini mics via Rode's Connect software is actually an ideal option because it gives you the level of flexibility that I was speaking about a little earlier. And so, by the way, these are all USB mics, so you don't need a USB audio interface. And the Rode Connect software is free, and the mics are a bargain at less than $100 to $150 each. And so, based on our investigations, this is actually one of the simplest and best multi-track recorder options out there at the moment, especially if you're thinking about having a tool that allows you to connect faster with your target audience. Okay, and also this actually is kind of good because whether you are a solopreneur or you have a team behind your podcast operations, you can actually afford this too. So when you think about multi-track recorder equipment, by the way, I'm just giving you the best multi-track recorder options. So I spoke to you about multi-track recorder software, right? I spoke about Squadcast and so on and so forth. I also spoke to you about the multi-track recording locally into a computer. Now I want to really introduce you to multi-track recorder equipment. Okay, first you have the Zoom PodTrack P4. You can see this on the screen here, and this actually is a 200 all-in-one podcasting device. You can plug in up to 4 XLR mics and bring in remote guests too. Okay, either via phone or online. You can even play pre-recorded clips, music, and sound effects live in your sessions. So that kind of gives you a lot of creativity. It gives you a lot of flexibility, especially during the pre-production and post-production phases. You have also the Rodecaster or Rodecaster 2. So you have two variations of the same, not the same, but of one product here. And so the Rodecaster and Rodecaster 2 are bigger and more powerful alternatives to the PodTrack P4, though at 3 times the price. So if your podcast your podcast or your financial position allows you to buy this equipment, that's kind of cool. Next, I want to share with you the Zoom H6 digital recorder. So the thing is that the Zoom H6, this one is really great in terms of granularity, in terms of detail, in terms of quality too. Okay, and so the Zoom H6 is also a great option if you only want in-person and local recordings. You can plug in 4 XLR mics as standard, but you can buy an additional attachment that can take up to 6. The thing is that when you think about taking up to 6, it's all about having this multi-guest capability. Multi-guest capability in the sense that if your guests are located in different geographies and you're trying to really sync their input together at the same time, then this Zoom H6 is a great option, especially in the long run, because the audio quality is still there anyway. So that's really fantastic. I want to talk to you also about split stereo channel recording. And now, when you hear the term split stereo channel recording, this is not really one of the latest and greatest, that's for sure. But it's still, this technique actually still kicks ass in the industry. Okay, so this could also be a possibility for you. So an older and more basic way of doing split track recordings is to actually record in stereo, where one participant is picked up on the right channel and the other on the left. And this can be split out into separate mono tracks later on. Now, this route won't work if you record in normal or joint stereo. It has to be split stereo, where basically what happens here is that 2 mics are panned to the hard left and right. And this would typically be via a USB audio interface, like the Focusrite Scarlett 2 i2 that I just spoke to you a little earlier. So this is an important element to think about. Now, one thing for sure is that when you think about doing this way, it has to be very good for you in the sense that you have to have a clear idea of what works for you. So when we talk about split stereo channel recording, you can have a joint stereo track, identical on both sides, or you can have a stereo track where participants are being recorded in the left and right channels, or you can split a stereo track into mono tracks if you would like to work on them independently. Okay. So when I speak about a joint stereo track, identical on both sides, so that what happens here is that everything here is still on one track and what we might call an all-in-one recording. However, If a stereo track is recorded with one participant on the left channel and on the right channel, it can be split into two separate tracks. So this is a very basic form of multi-tracking. When you have a stereo track where participants are being recorded in the left and right channel, this is also a possibility. So you are able to invite a guest and actually continue recording anyway. But you can also split a stereo track into two mono tracks if you like to work on them independently. So that's really fantastic, especially when it comes to functionality. Now, there's also a possibility of actually having a manual multi-track recording. Okay, so what happens here is that everyone can get together on Zoom or any other remote call platform if you are recording online. So this is a possibility. And what happens here is that each person then sets up a way to record their own side of the conversation. This could be loading up on Audacity or setting a digital recorder on the desk in front of you. So that's kind of cool. And what happens here is that once the session is over, everyone sends their own audio to the designated editor to actually be polished and synced up. And when done well, these recordings can sound like everyone was sitting in the same room together. But see, the thing is that this has to the output, the quality of the output has to actually has to deal with the designated editor. The editor must be really good. Okay. Be warned though that there's always a risk that someone hits the wrong button and doesn't record their own side of the chat. Always run a backup recording when working this way. Lower sound quality is in one episode is better than no episode at all. Finally, if you're getting together in the same room, see if everyone can bring their own laptops. If each person records into Audacity or another software on their individual computer, then you are all recording on separate tracks that can be synced together later on. You can also have editing and producing multi-track recordings. You can do the same thing. You can do it DIY, or you can have a third party actually help out. Okay, so the thing is that one common argument against the multi-track approach is that it can really increase editing and production time and cost for that matter. However, you can outsource this work if you are prepared to spend a little money. Another option is to use a podcast maker tools like Alitu. Alitu, actually, by the way, we have reviewed Alitu on another show. Alitu can take the separate tracks of your multi-track recording, clean and level them up, then sync them together automatically. So that's kind of cool. And even better is that you can record, build, and publish your episodes within the Alitu interface. It includes extra features like music, transcriptions, and hosting, all under one single monthly subscription. So that's really fantastic. So overall, when you think about multi-track recording, think about flexibility, think about scalability, but most importantly, think about efficiency, especially over time. So what are the closing arguments here? In today's conversation, I'll give you a multi-track recorder guide. I'll give you the basics, the options, and now the closing arguments. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.